Hey guys, once again, and welcome to Ahead of the Curve brought to you by Bybit. My name is Francesca. You can call me Fran. And here, we're going to be talking about your favorite topic, crypto, with some of your best friends, favorite names, and brightest minds in the field. Today, we're stoked, I'm stoked to really have, with us a content czar, Molly Jane Zuckerman, none other than the head of content over at CoinMarketCap, a good friend of ours. I'm personally a great fan, and I know that many of you are very excited to hear from her. So, Molly, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us here today. Molly, do you want to say hi to everyone? Do a little intro.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I love waking up and starting my day with just like a live conference about cryptocurrencies.
Molly's really an expert in many fields, but just for the interest of today, we're going to be talking a lot about altcoins. And we're going to keep things a little casual around here. Earlier we have our cup of gingerbread latte. You know what? I even have like tons of water with me. I have my 1.5 liter bottle. Got to keep ourselves hydrated, right? We want to hear from you guys, especially your thoughts, any questions that you might have about how you're going to navigate the markets. Any feelings, any comments, bring them in. Right, we've already have a couple of questions streaming in right now. Thank you, Amash. Thank you, Alendu, for writing in. In case you've just joined us, welcome to the Crypto Talk of the Hour. We're going to talk about altcoins 2022. Is it going to be a bullish or bearish year ahead? Big questions on everyone's minds, and it's probably quite the time to be talking about this. We're seeing a sea of red in the crypto markets today. Quite the narrative of late, really. Although we did see a bit of a reprieve, a bit of a breather yesterday. I saw a couple of green just before, kind of like going to bed, and then early this morning I saw, oh man, things are dipping again. Moses, if you could just bring up the CMC page, I want to do a little bit of a pulse check on prices. Let's take a look at the bellwethers, Bitcoin and Ether. Bitcoin, we're sitting at 35,980, close to 36K. 24 hours change about 5% southbound. Um, Ether, we're looking at 2.3, 2.4 thousand, 4% down. Looking at some of the top assets by market cap, USDT, BNB, USDC, all pointing downwards. ADA, XRP. Yes, it's a place to kind of discover how things are going. And Mo, if Molly, if you could just weigh in here, quick opening statements about how you feel about the markets today.
Sure. So, like I said, I love waking up to go to a crypto conference first thing in the morning. I don't love waking up to a sea of red. But I have to say, although I'm not usually a trading analyst or a predictor of the markets, yesterday I could see this coming just because of the external factors. Yesterday there were power outages in all of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. And Kazakhstan is where not in the majority, but where a majority of Bitcoin mining takes place. So what I'm seeing right now is the market's just slowly reacting to the news of Bitcoin miners being down for a while.
I've got Aditya writing in here asking, are we in the bear market for 2022? What's your take, Molly, on that?
Well, so I've been in crypto for 5 years now. So I've lived through some pretty dark, some pretty dark bear market times. I think it's too soon to say. It's only January. Um, as we all know, last January was huge. I mean, Bitcoin does tend to go in these sort of 4 year cycles, but I think that there's a lot of unknowns going into the future right now. I couldn't say basically. That's my
Mhm.
non-answer for you.
I mean, how about this kind? Oh, actually, this kind of weaves in with Elendu's question. Why does the blockchain on altcoins seem to correlate with Bitcoin? What's the relationship and why does it happen?
You want me to take a stab at that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bitcoin is just the market leader, and that has nothing to do with whether it is better. It has nothing to do with whether it is stronger. It's first. It's first, and it's just stayed all the way up there. And when something has that much swaying power, you know, everything else just seems to follow because it's where the majority of the trading is. It's where the majority of the wallets are. And so the crypto market is still relatively thin as a whole, which means that bad news, really big whale trades can move everything. And altcoins do continue to take their lead from Bitcoin. And I really don't see that changing anytime soon.
Hmm. So do you kind of how would you position, I guess, your opinion on the dominance of Bitcoin? There's been buzz going around basically saying that BTC is slowly diminishing as the potential of altcoins are slowly surfacing. In that kind of correlation and balance of scale, any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, somewhat ironically, because I work at CoinMarketCap, which is a ranking website, I don't think of cryptocurrencies ever as being in competition with each other. I think of them all as coexisting separately but equally and having their own roles to play in whatever their particular use cases are. So it would be hard for me to say that Bitcoin is diminishing because altcoins are increasing. I think that Bitcoin can keep doing its thing the way it is, and then altcoins that have their own use cases can keep doing their own things. With that being said, things like the DeFi summer of last year, meme coins, they're definitely being talked about more than they ever were before. Whether that means they're being used more than ever before, I'm not quite as certain. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about meme coins because that's a very interesting and I guess that's a very fun space to talk about, right? It's polarizing, arguably, but you have the underdoge. I had to kind of slip that in. Pun intended. Things like Doge, SHIB, kind of seeing massive success last year. Do you think this kind of trend, this kind of thinking mindsets, do you think they're going to continue to thrive this year?
I think it's possible. People are certainly trying. If you look at how many coins on CoinMarketCap have some sort of baby dog featured on them. We actually have an entire category called Dog on Doggerel that you can just scroll through and see all of the different dog flavored coins. But what's interesting is looking at just what I do, which is create educational content about cryptocurrencies. One of the things we did at the end of the year was we showed what people were really looking at CoinMarketCap over the past year, and not only were people really looking at dog coins, almost the majority of the time, whenever we shared that on social media, that was what people were more interested in. So if we're going to talk about this year based on last year, then definitely meme coins are going to be, still one of the most talked about things. However, each year crypto just continues to surprise me with like the new things that come up. So if meme coins become just completely last year's conversation and they're never spoken about again, I also wouldn't be surprised.
I'm going to put you on a spot here. I'm not sure if you have your crystal ball in handy, but what do you think could be the underdog this year?
Well, I've always been partial to Ethereum, although that's not technically one of the smaller altcoins. I think that the news this week that Ethereum 2.0 is now a dead phrase, it should be called consensus layer, is interesting. I think that it will change people's mentality if they're not waiting for this Ethereum 2.0 to happen. It's more just like they're waiting for the merging of the consensus layer to like slide onto the blockchain. That's definitely not the right way to describe it. But simply because most of the DeFi applications out there are built on Ethereum, regardless of the gas fees and sort of the transaction problems, I'm going to be looking to Ethereum always to see what new things will happen in the crypto space.
It's kind of funny because just a couple of minutes before I came in, a friend of mine kind of texted me and said, like, "Hey, Fran, could you get Molly's thoughts on cross-chain versus multi-chain. You know, the things a lot of people seem to have differing views on that. So, yeah, just, broad strokes or dive deep into your thinking about, the tussle or push and pull between cross and multi-chain.
Sure. So, I mean, it's definitely a buzzword when you talk about blockchain interoperability, blockchains communicating with each other. But at the same time, my opinion is that if the cryptocurrency space keeps its ethos at its heart, of we're trying to make a new interconnected, decentralized world, a new financial system that's completely separate from the existing traditional financial system to sort of avoid the problems that that has had in the past, then I think that this interoperability is important. As opposed, in relation to specifically multi-chain versus cross-chain, I'm not the biggest expert on both of those things. I will say that I do think what Polkadot is doing with parachains is fascinating. I think the technology is so complex. Like, don't put me on the spot and ask me to explain exactly what it is. But the possibilities it seems for blockchains working together through the use of parachains seems like a really positive step.
That's fair. I want to circle back to CoinMarketCap, right? It's a very, really user-friendly platform. I use it. We have our viewers writing in, various people, including Arun, saying that CoinMarketCap is great. He's been a great user of the system for a couple of years, so have I. Do you have any plans on the roadmap to auto scale out and scale in internal systems to accommodate the peak traffic introduced by the latest rewards programs or redemptions? But I think broadly speaking, just heavy traffic, how do you guys manage that?
Yeah, so one of the answers we have when people talk about our traffic and the fact we've gone down a few times is we have this humble brag where it's like other data aggregators don't go down as often because they don't even see like a tenth of the traffic that we're seeing every day. No, but in all seriousness, it has been a problem. Our popularity has become a problem. We've obviously had to increase our servers several times. And I think what we've really done towards the end of last quarter, because we have introduced, like this person said, so many products that people like. We have our diamonds rewards, so users that come to our site and interact, they earn diamonds that they can then redeem for NFTs and things like that. We also had an airdrop program. We have our learn and earn campaigns, et cetera. It does bring a lot of people on. And so we have really done an entire engineering overhaul, and it's not something fancy and shiny that you can see on our homepage, but you can rest assured that our backend, our engineering team, has gone way above and beyond to make sure that we're prepared for either a bull or a bear market, because either way, people are still going to come to us to see the coin prices.
Yeah, I can totally relate and even empathize with, with how the problem could be it's a sign of good popularity and good
It's a great
traffic. So
problem.
yeah, great problem to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one of the other things that one of the viewers kind of had in terms of to build on those questions, Elendu wrote in to say, with a plethora of coins coming out daily, how do you guys, CoinMarketCap, regulate and ensure that their listings are foolproof, safe from rug pulls, and basically, kind of like the safety net? How do you guys approach that?
Sure. So that's definitely a question. We get a lot of questions about listings. And I will say it's twofold. On one hand, we have our listings team, also, again, very hardworking. And what they do is, due diligence. They've been doing it for years. They, do their own research. They vet the projects thoroughly. On the other hand, we do have something which is called an untracked listing, which is how we get so many projects to list so quickly. And what this means is that the project actually takes advantage of something called a self-reporting dashboard. and this isn't a secret, any project can apply to have a self-reporting dashboard. And they actually entered their information themselves, like their market cap, their circulating supply, et cetera. And our listings team will not verify that, because the important thing is getting information out to the project's users. But we will have a note saying this has not been verified by our listings team. This is from the project self-reporting dashboard. So it's twofold. And I definitely, if any people are in crypto projects here, I encourage you to take advantage of the self-reporting dashboard. Don't take advantage of it, but like use it as it's meant to be used, to get your information out there.
Well, I'm sure Molly will probably host a show or have some articles on it on your
Yeah.
site about educational content. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So what I do is CoinMarketCap, similar to a bunch of other sites, has a learn section, but ours is different because we were not boring and called it learn. We call it Alexandria, like the Library of Alexandria. And the goal of the original Library of Alexandria was to collect all the knowledge about everything in the world together in one place. And we have a smaller goal of just collecting cryptocurrency knowledge into one place. So we started it in September of last year, and now we've grown. We have over 1 million readers a week. We have trading analysis, like how-to guides. We have daily news. We actually have a podcast that I'm the co-host of called Coin Market Recap that you guys can listen to on Fridays. I think it's very fun. And yeah, we're always growing and expanding. I never thought in life that my job would be writing and editing cryptocurrency educational content, but now I cannot think of doing anything else. So.
Nice. What's your favorite topic to write about, if any? I know it's going to be hard. I face the kind of struggle myself whenever people ask me, "Oh, what's your favorite thing to do?" But if there could be one or two, what would it be?
Sure. So one of the things I like to do is to take an event and break it down, if that makes sense. So we have some really great articles on, for example, what happened with the original the DAO exploit. Just because taking events like that people that just join the space and are like, DeFi degens and like trading their NFTs, they might not have heard of it, and they might not realize that this is something you should probably know if you're going to be, aping into DAOs and governance tokens. So writing a piece like that, I think that's like a really approachable explainer, like explain it like I'm five kind of way for our audience, is just really fun for me to sort of revisit the past. Um, in terms of other things, I do love being on the podcast because we talk about the week's crypto news. But again, we're trying to talk about it in a way that someone that owns no crypto, has never been on CoinMarketCap, could just listen to it and understand what's going on, which is difficult to do. We're kind of an insider group as crypto people. So those are my answers.
Yeah, one of the things that I always like to challenge myself is if I explain whatever I explain, can my grandma get it like just like that, right? So I think it's always a struggle because it's such a complicating space, complicating concepts that even I myself sometimes struggle to understand. So explaining it to someone else who's totally just new to the space, it's a challenge, but it's kind of fun, right? I'm not sure if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I think on our CoinMarketCap YouTube channel, we even have a video where we explain Bitcoin or blockchain to an actual 5-year-old. Like we're trying to make it simple for everyone. Yeah.
So yeah, earlier, Molly, you talked about DAOs, and I think I was struggling to. I think I came across a question about DAOs, and I wanted to see if I could whip that up, but you know, maybe in the meantime, let's just go through the list. There's thanks to all our audience, to all our viewers for writing in. We've got a bunch of questions streaming in from the audience. Thanks, Priscilla. There we go. Arun, 2022 seems to be a year of DAOs. Does CMC have any plans to take this route for any of the new innovations or products? Thank you, Pris.
That is a really good question. So as I said before, I head of content at CoinMarketCap, and we have CoinMarketCap Alexandria, which has our educational articles. One thing that my team and myself are looking into this quarter is what kind of educational crypto content DAOs there are out there. Our plan is to join them ourselves, see how they work, because I'm not a member of any DAO. I want to get the firsthand experience and see if that's something that we could do with our educational content, at least in some part. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way, is that you don't really want any random person that's part of a DAO writing articles and just posting them on your website. Like that goes against like all of my journalistic instincts, like all of my instincts as a content editor. But I think that there's a lot more ways that people can use a sort of more community-based model, especially because our content, and I'm sure you maybe you understand this too, varies in readership so much. You know, you publish an article about a coin you think will do well, it will get 10 views. You publish another one, it gets 300,000. And so if the community is able to say, actually, this is what we want to know about, we don't care about parachains, we care about yield farming, for example, it would be interesting. So I'm hoping maybe in quarter 2 or quarter 3, you'll see some more sort of like DAO-like tendrils escaping from us. Yeah.
Sounds exciting. We'll keep us posted. We'll have our eyes peeled on that, and very much looking forward to it. And lots of questions also coming in on the metaverse and DeFi. So I'm going to read one out from Henry. What are your thoughts on metaverse coins or GameFi coins?
So obviously they're incredibly popular, and unfortunately I'm not a gamer. So I know people that are, and they have this passion for gaming, and I completely understand how metaverse coins and GameFi coins, they're never going to go away as long as there are gamers in the world, because the idea of combining gaming and making money, it's just such an obvious marriage of the two. Um, Yeah, I mean, we've at CoinMarketCap, we experiment with the metaverse a little bit, not so much as playing the games that exist there, but we host our weekly, calls in the metaverse. We use gather.town, so we have little avatars. We're walking around, we're talking to each other about our tasks for the week, all in this little virtual world. I mean, it's just one step uh, past this Zoom that we're having right now, but we like it, and, if a metaverse game or a GameFi game ever comes out in the future that is more similar to the games I like, like an Animal Crossing or Pokemon that are beyond just, like, clicking a button and flipping cards, like Axie Infinity. No offense to Axie Infinity, I tried to play it once and I was like, "Okay."
They're so
Um,
cute. How could can't resist those. So I don't
they're
know what.
adorable, but what if you could, walk around like a little field with one instead of just it just is on the screen, staring at you with its 2D eyes. Um, yeah, I guess that's my answer to that one.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting, like, what if there was a crossover, right? And I think that's kind of like the direction that we're going with the metaverse. The crossover, the NFTs metaverse, and who knows? Maybe at one point, GameFi metaverse, it's all going to be interconnected, and it's all going to be part of the great circle of life. Um, um, yeah, so there's an anonymous attendee who kind of building on the GameFi coins question was asking, is it good to hold for the long term? But I think you kind of talked about that. It's always going to be here, right? Anything to add in terms of long-term holding, or recently I saw a post I think by Dan Held, who is like people's perception or like expectation versus reality of holding, right? It's like people expect it to be like a straight line, kind of curving up, when in fact it's like walk a couple of steps and there's a ditch, and like walk a couple more steps, another whole big hole. And yeah, I just want to have a little fun chat about what your views are in terms of whether it's long-term holding or kind of like a little bit of a fun tango buy sell here and there, and kind of just like how people can navigate environments like where we are right now, right? It's definitely not easy, very serious to some, and yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I'm a holder, I'm a hodler. I never sell anything, ever, because I have like a 20-year plan. I don't think most people probably don't go by that strategy. Most people probably want, to trade to make money, to, buy things tomorrow, next month, etc. With that being said, I do think that, and because I'm not a big trader myself, this advice which is not financial advice, comes from editing articles from our trading analysts that write for us, which is that whenever you're going to sort of buy into any sort of cryptocurrency with the plan to trade it in like the relative short term, you need to come up with the plan ahead of time, which is I will buy at this price, I will sell at this price, and I will never sell until it gets to that price. And every time I edit an article like this that has advice for people, they always say the biggest mistake is not following your own plan. It's you always lose out if you don't follow your own plan. So obviously you have to know enough to make that sort of plan in the first place. But I do think that before you go into something, to have that sort of like 5, 10 day, these sort of goals for yourself, that's what seems to be the best way to avoid. It's like when you were in elementary school and you took those multi-choice tests, with like A, B, C, D, and you had to fill in the thing. There's some statistic where it's like if you went back and changed your answer, you were more likely to get it wrong. You should always just go with the first one. It's like statistically proven to be correct. So, make a trading plan and stick to it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that is so true. But I feel like once you're in the market, you get emotional about things, right? And it's like, oh man, like I love memes, right? I always entertain myself going through like social media, and just looking at all these memes. And one of them I just saw recently, and kind of, a lot of it was, it's kind of like people waiting in line, like when BTC was like 60K, right? So it's like at the top, people are like, we want to buy in, and then when and they're saying like, oh yeah, I should have entered when it was like 30K, or like I should have entered earlier. But right now where we are, a lot of people are like scared, right? It's like the fear is real. So I think a lot what you said really makes sense, right? If you have a plan, stick to it. If there's it's a long-term plan, it's like 20 years. I think that's pretty foundationally, at least you're convinced that it's a 20-year game that you're playing, or 20-year chart path. And yeah, if you kind of just follow that, step by step, you'll probably get there in due course, right? If you could share, one of the anonymous attendees wrote in to ask, what are your top crypto picks? Um,
This is an easy one. I'm only Bitcoin. That's
ah.
it. Yeah.
It's funny because we're talking about altcoins
I
today.
know. I know. I don't fit into the conversation anymore. Yeah, I'm only Bitcoin. I'm like a Bitcoin maximalist. Altcoins convince me of your power. I haven't been convinced. I haven't been convinced yet.
Oh dear. Well, let's talk about
Mhm.
Bitcoin then, because someone else wrote in to ask what happens when or if Bitcoin breaks the 30K level. Right now, pulse check, we're at 36,000.
Yeah, again, like I said, since I'm not a big trader, I soak up the information of everyone around me. One of our editors said last week when Bitcoin started to fall is that if Bitcoin goes below 37, it will hit 32. And she was basically right. Like I just kind of soak in what everyone else says around me, but because I won't sell for 20 years, I'm hands off. Like doesn't bother me. I think the only reason I have that mentality is because I joined, like I said, working in crypto as a journalist at Cointelegraph in the end of 2017 when Bitcoin was 20K. And then I watched it fall to $3,000 in 4 months. So having that be my introduction, that's just the norm to me. Any sort of stability, any sort of big numbers, I'm like, that's the anomaly. I thrive when Bitcoin is making $20,000 moves up and down.
Actually, Molly, now you got me curious. What brought you to crypto? Did you say 2017? Um,
Yeah, December.
yeah, what happened there? Was there a big revelation? What brought you into the space?
No, it's I think that almost everyone that is in crypto is in for incredibly strange and diverse reasons. And so what happened is that a really good friend of mine got a new job. She's like, "Oh, I'm an editor at this magazine that writes about digital currencies." Um, and she joined when I think November 2017 when Bitcoin was like, 6, 7,000. They didn't have that much traffic. She's like, my job is kind of interesting. December hits, Bitcoin goes to $20,000 and she can't get enough news on the site. It's like everyone's going there. They need more information. They need more people. And she just said, you're a great writer. I have a degree in Russian literature and a master's in Russian political science. She goes, you're a great writer. You write about Russian politics. Like, why don't you write about some cryptocurrency? And that was it. So I'm one of the liberal arts major cryptocurrency educators out there.
Wow.
Mhm.
What's your story in terms of like how you picked up on, the first few steps of knowing about the field? It is a complex field, but
Yeah.
the onboarding process, like kind of like the first few questions that you asked, your friend maybe, or the first few Google search keywords that you keyed in to find out more. Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, I had some best friends from college that had been into crypto since like 2015. So they sent me a list of 100 people to follow on Twitter. And I still have that list. And I send it to people when they get into it. I say, follow these people on Twitter. I watched a few documentaries on Netflix there's one called Banking on Bitcoin. There's some other YouTube videos about it. And then I think the best experience was my second week on the job. Cointelegraph flew me to San Francisco to cover a conference. So I got to meet Charlie Lee there, the founder of Litecoin, and a few other people, and I had to interview them. And so it was really just throw me into the deep end, and make sure I understand all the concepts. But I do remember I think the hardest thing I ever had to do as an intro to crypto was, again, my first month on the job. Something happened with Tether, and my editor said, "Give me 500 words on what happened with Tether." There's a lot of backstory you have to understand before you can write 500 words on what happened with Tether. So that was like a 5-hour long journey through the internet of what a stable coin is, whether Tether is backed one to one, what their relationship is with all the exchanges, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, my advice is just go back and be off the deep end. Just like how I learned Russian, I learned Russian from a woman that didn't speak English. It's like you learn crypto from people that only, speak crypto.
Now, why does that story sound so familiar? Oh wait, that's what happened to me. It's like go into the deep end of the pool, just you just got to do it. You paddle a few kind of waves and yeah, get into the space. Join various Discord channels, follow people on Twitter, um, make a couple of boo boos, and yeah, you learn from all these lessons as we go. Who's on your like
Mhm.
top 5 favorite list?
Here we go. And again, this list was not made by me. This was made by a friend that bought into Ethereum so early that he just bought a house in a Tesla and he's not there yet. So good job for him. I have the messages from him telling me buy Ethereum right now. And I responded saying, what did I say? And I said, oh, I can't find it on my like Charles Schwab trading account. I don't know what that is. Anyway, who are my top people? Um, I really like Meltem Demirors on Twitter. I've spoken to her a few times. I think that she has a really interesting outlook on life and on cryptocurrency, and she's very, very opinionated, which is fun for me. I also really like Lee Quen, who's a former CoinDesk journalist that now has started a real life physical magazine with Cami Russo called Des Femme about women in crypto and Bitcoin, which is fantastic. Let's see, 3 more. Oh, I don't know, that's hard. I'll give a shout out if he's watching to my boss, Sean Hang at CoinMarketCap. He has very few Twitter followers. He wants more. He posts really great insights about the crypto space. I think he's at like 150 followers now. So he could get a few more. Okay, yeah, I'll end with 3. My 3.
That's great. I'll add 2 to that list. Bybit_official. That's one. And what's Ben's Twitter handle? My boss and CEO Ben. I think it's Ben Bybit. Ben Joe. That's 5. All right, guys. Um, and who would you add to the list now? First name that comes to mind.
Let's see.
Question from the audience.
Who would I add to the list now? I don't think Lee Quen is on there. I don't think she was on my friend's radar when that happened. Let's see. There's a few other people from the world of crypto research that I don't think are in there as much. I think that the people at Compass Mining have some really good stuff. They came out with this documentary on YouTube about mining in the Navajo Nation, and they post some really great insights on Twitter. I think that's, I don't want to get it wrong. I think it's like that's maybe Will Clemente. Anyone that's at Compass Mining. Zach Vole is funny on Twitter. He can be ridiculous, but he's there.
Big
Same
fan.
with Larry Sermach from the block. He also can be ridiculous on Twitter, but also just someone, you know, to follow. Mike Dudas from the same thing, former block guy. Yeah, I guess I'd add those people.
Sounds great. Yeah, a lot of these are just, I mean, like, if not informational, they're super entertaining. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time on my phone, probably too much, but hey, that's how you kind of get started and kind of dive deep into the field, right? So, that's good.
That's how you do it.
Alrighty, back to the question on altcoins. Well, there's so many. How do I pick these? Maybe, you know what? Let's just segue a little bit into. Oh man, I'm sorry, I can't make up my mind. There's so many good ones. All right, I'll just pick a random one. Sakib's asking, what are your views on Polkadot? Can we see it rally like Solana has done in future after parachains?
Sure. So, like I said before, I'm not going to claim to understand all of Polkadot's technology. I think I would have to be a developer or a like just something different than what I am, which is like I said, a liberal arts crypto content educator. With that being said, I think that Polkadot needs to make itself a little bit more understandable by more people. And I'm not talking about the price, I'm just talking about in general, in order for it to get sort of like the name recognition it needs for people to just to understand and use it more. On the other hand, I think people a lot of times when they talk about the future of blockchain and these sort of like decentralized technologies, is that someday we'll live in a world where you will use an application, you'll use like a web browser, and you won't even know that it's running on blockchain. That won't even matter. It's just like going on in the background. And I think with something like Polkadot, that's what could happen because they're building these new sort of technologies with parachains, parathreads, et cetera. And perhaps in the future, we will use something and it won't even occur to us to wonder what it's based on. And it will be based somehow on these sort of, this sort of idea of parachains. Yeah, not a Polkadot expert, but that's my best guess.
That's fair. I'm going to circle back to the markets. Prices haven't changed that much since we started about 40 minutes ago. Bitcoin at 36,000 plus minus, Ether at 2.4K. I think Moses, yeah, nice. Thanks, bro. Sharing the charts right now. But back to the markets, I think a lot of people have kind of questions or thoughts really on it. I know Tabogo wrote in to ask, is this a time to buy the dip or to DCA? Various people, Sakib in writing saying, right now we're hearing some concerning news like Elon Musk's saying that we can see a recession this year. If that happens, what are your views about how it will impact the crypto markets? We were talking about correlation now between traditional markets, equities, and the crypto markets. Any thoughts on a broad market action here, Molly? DCA dip, buy the dip, excuse me. Ooh, I'm not sure if I lost you there.
You did lose me, but I'm back. I heard Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Are you talking about his McDonald's tweet?
We could talk about that, but Sakib was saying, he
mentioned concerns about the recession, or possibly entering a recession this year. Correlation between possibly traditional equities markets and how it's going to impact the crypto markets. So it really is just like casting a wide fishnet. Kind of, what are your views on the market? And I know someone else wrote in, Tabogo, asking whether this is the time to buy the dip or to DCA. Yeah, probably just like investment strategies, trading strategies, kind of insights.
Sure. So I'm a big fan of dollar cost averaging because I think that anyone can do it. You don't have to understand anything. It's so simple. It's that if you buy a little bit at a certain interval, then you escape the volatility. You smooth it out over time, which I think is just makes so much sense in the crypto market, which is just like volatility is it's his middle name. In terms of how it correlates to the wider markets, as I mentioned before, the crypto market is very thin. There's not that much trading going on. I mean, there's a lot, but compared to the stock market, it's just kind of like a drop in the bucket sometimes. And so when this like bad news happens, like people, like what's happening in the equity markets, like what's happening in America now that the government is sort of rolling back some provisions they had enacted during the height of the pandemic. I won't say during the pandemic because like it's over already. It's definitely not over. I could see the crypto market reacting poorly, which always bothers me a little bit because the crypto market used to go up when the traditional market had bad news. It was like they were thriving when the traditional market did something wrong. You know, they're like, haha, we're better than you. That hasn't really been the case recently. So it makes it harder. It makes it harder to predict. That's for sure.
Yeah. Wish we had that crystal ball, don't we?
Mhm.
Well, but it kind of plays into your 20-year plan, right? I mean, if you're in for the long-term play, you know, having that kind of discipline to just DCA in certain times. Yeah, I totally get and agree with your point. We unfortunately we do only have just time for a couple of final questions, so I do want to sneak in a couple kind of segue into the NFT space, and I think some people have questions on DeFi. So let me just touch on Derek's question now on what are your thoughts on a mini collapse of the DeFi 2 protocols in recent times?
I'm sorry, on the collapse of which protocol?
DeFi 2 protocols.
Oh, like the Olympus DAO, etc.
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
DeFi 2.0 was another one of those things where I had everyone I knew explain it to me in different ways as slowly as possible until I understood like what was happening. I mean, their goal was to reinvent money again. You know, Bitcoin reinvented it, and then DeFi 2.0 was reinventing it for the 2.0 time. Um, I will say I don't think the experiment is over yet, just because it's not doing what they thought it would do right now. Doesn't mean it can't do well eventually. But I feel like I'm going to sound ignorant now. I know it has a lot to do with like algorithmically backed stable coins and collateral and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, even as someone that doesn't understand it fully, I don't think it's over yet. I think people are going to keep iterating because if you saw how many forks there were of Olympus DAO, it was like I remember we did an article about 8 of just the top ones. So maybe one of them could end up working out in the end.
Great. How would you say, or I don't know if it's an advice or just thoughts on how best pick new token launches? Well, we're talking about launch pads. Question from Antanas, best way to pick launch pads, but in general, just kind of with the quick kind of introduction of new tokens and platforms, how do you pick the best ones? And I guess I'm going to add this in, like, how do you avoid, you know, the potentially sketchy ones?
I think we have a great article on Alexandria called How to Pick the Best Launch Pad. Maybe I'll send it in after this. It definitely has a lot to do with, at least for me, reputation, is that you look at launch pads that have had launches that were successful, that people talked highly of, that have a lot of users that participated in them. I'm not saying that any new project should be immediately dismissed out of hand just because it's new and untested, but for the most part, because the crypto space, as everyone says, is like, there's a lot of scammers, there's a lot of people trying to take your money out there. Going for sort of the tried and true is sometimes the best way. I'm gonna pull up our article about launchpads now for everyone.
Great.
Mhm,
Yeah, send that over. We might send it
mhm.
out. We have a question from Ignis. Will emergent L2 rollup tokens, Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync, steal the thunder from Solana AVAX, FTM1, Atom, Near, all this good stuff this year? Will it happen this year?
There's article. Let's see. Um, I don't know. I mean, I remember, Solana had the crazy ride last year, um, inspired by FTX, the personality of Sam Bankman-Fried, obviously the technology of Solana. In terms of the other coins, I mean, I think in 2022, almost anything is possible. Um, if you think about how each year there's a new term you've never even heard before. 2 years ago we had not heard of DeFi. Last year, if you thought of the metaverse, you thought of, like, I don't know, Sims or something.
That's the OG.
I know I'm being vague here and not talking about the specifics of these coins, but my point is that anything can happen in 2022.
Yeah, when I entered the space, I was trying to, catch up on everything I needed to know, and I feel like I'm never there. It's like every time, every morning I wake up and be like, oh, hey, that's something new. Hey, let's add that new word into the dictionary. Let's go search that up. It is a fast evolving space. That's always one of the things that I always like to talk to people about. It's an ever learning journey once you're in this space. Great. Rakib is asking about interest rates. What does interest rates have to do with the price of Bitcoin? And I guess let's extend that into crypto in general. Lots of Fed action lately. Lots of talk about the impact and correlation there.
Yeah, so this is something I said before, which is, like, in the past, whenever usually the US government has done something bad for the people, they have raised interest rates, they have made people in their minds, like, lose money, bad for the economy. Bitcoin is usually done very well as an alternative. And as I've said recently, we've seen that not happening. We've seen that when there's FUD in the traditional media and in the economy in America, that is reflecting back into Bitcoin. I'm not sure what has changed. I'm not sure why Bitcoin's price has all of a sudden become so connected to traditional market movements. And I think in part, we can blame it a little bit on the pandemic, where it's just like everything we know has turned upside down. At the same time, although again, this is like a macro event, the sort of crackdown on cryptocurrency mining in China, in some parts of America, the fact that Kazakhstan, had a revolution this month, it just means that Bitcoin, mining power has become, like, uncertain. And so I think that when there's uncertainty in that, it could make it more closely correlated to the traditional markets. That's my theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, there's so much to talk about, and I think it really goes deep into different layers of kind of like analysis. And yeah, I wish we had more time. Like, I keep looking at the clock, and I'm like, oh, there's so many questions to go through. Like, I don't even know how to. Let's not waste time rambling on. I'm gonna get down to some of the final questions that we have here on the list. Let's see. Where do you see the mainstream adoption of altcoins standing currently? Did we just start or still in the proof of concept stage? Question from Arun.
You know what the statistic I heard last week is that in the UK, there are over 40,000 cryptocurrency advertisements. That's a lot. And of altcoins, like, people are not really advertising Bitcoin quite as much. I guess Grayscale does, but yeah, that seems like the start of a boom to me. That seems like people are, I mean, for us, we've been in altcoins for years, but for the rest of the world, like, they're going around London and they're seeing Floki Eno ads on the side of like buses for the first time. So yeah, I'd say it's the beginning of a boom.
Sounds good. Oh man, Molly, with 4 minutes to the clock, I'm afraid we've run out of time. I don't know. These couple of weeks have really been humbling for many of us, right? I don't know about you, but for people like me, I really thought that, really it's a case of like, who thought we knew what's going on. I thought that I knew a lot of things that's going on, where things are going, but really none of us really know to some extent. And yeah, I guess, if there could be any final thoughts from you, Molly, about anything, everything, with 1 to 2 minutes left to the clock. Floor is yours for final thoughts.
Sure. So we've talked a lot about like market fears and whether altcoins are a thing or not. You know, why is Bitcoin so strong? I would just say like the last piece of advice I want to give you guys is just don't panic. You know, it's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that book. Like don't panic. Like I said, I watched Bitcoin go from 20,000 to 3,000 and back up to 67,000. If you're going to be in the market, be in it for the long being in it for the long haul. Don't have a 20-year plan like me. That's insane. Like most people don't do that. But you know, have a few year plan. Don't change your mind a lot. You know, just decide you're gonna do something and then do it and don't panic. So that's
We are
my
gonna
advice.
make it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. Yeah, we've got questions coming in from the audience also asking about how we can get a recorded video of this chat. You guys can log on to YouTube. I think the Bybit YouTube channel. I'm not sure if Molly, you wanted to share, retweet on the CoinMarketCap YouTube page as well, but it will be on the Bybit official YouTube channel, so you can check out the recorded version there. Right. I guess that's all we have time for today. Guys, it's been such a pleasure having all of you here today. Thank you so much for writing in really good questions. Look, for me, I learned a couple of things from Molly, learned a couple of things that, I think I could take home and kind of just apply right away. So Molly, thank you so much for being such a gem, such a champ. This is Ahead of the Curve. My name's Francesca. You guys are awesome. Molly, just for being the absolute best in this past hour. I really can't wait to have you again on the show. I'll catch up with you offline again, obviously. So yeah, this wraps up the session. Goodbye, everybody. Be kind to one another and take care.